The special unit of the National Police Commissioner's Office, known informally as Vikingasveitin or the Viking Squad, was founded in October 1982. Today the unit has 46 officers. Like most tactical police units of this era, it was founded in order to have a special force that could deal with unusual high-risk situations that were deemed too dangerous for regular police to deal with. Now you may be wondering, prior to the founding of the police tactical unit, well, how did the Icelandic police deal with any sort of high-risk situations? Or were there perhaps none for them to deal with? Well, there had actually been a handful of incidents prior to 1982 that influenced the decision-making in creating such a force. And in this video I'm going to talk about one of these incidents. That is the 1976 downtown Reykjavik shooting spree. Enjoy! So it was a late Saturday night evening in early November 1976 when two young men entered a taxi in Hafnarfjörður and asked to be driven into the downtown area of Reykjavik. The two men were 19 and 20 years old, and throughout all my research into this case I haven't been able to find their names, so let's just call them Birkir and Ivar. So they arrive at the downtown of Reykjavik, and once there they apparently don't have any money to pay for the taxi fare. The taxi driver, very understandably, got very angry at them and thus drove them straight to the police station and charged them for, well, yeah, not paying the fare. However, since they had not committed any serious crimes and were only slightly intoxicated, the police eventually released them. That was around 6:30 in the morning. Once back on the street, Birkir and Ivar walked a short while over to Lögreglan 116, where they encountered the hunting store called Sportsval. There they were able to break in and entered the store unnoticed. Apparently they found breaking into the store quite easy, which makes sense. I mean, for Birkir this was not the first time he had broken in. And when I say that, I mean this was not the first time that he had broken into this particular gun store. Birkir had broken into this exact gun store several months prior, and he had apparently armed himself with a hunting knife and a shotgun, but because he didn't find the correct ammo for this particular shotgun, must have been a 16 gauge, he entered the store and was unable to do anything, and the police then fired a canister of tear gas at him, causing him to surrender. Yep, we are off to a pretty crazy story. Buckle up. Anyway, inside the store, Birkir and Ivar arm themselves with various types of guns, and this time are able to find the correct ammunition for each gun, and then they just started firing the guns left and right at merchandise inside the store. They apparently spent several dozen rounds just shooting the gun store into pieces. Oh, but now comes the strange part. So, this is occurring, as I said, about 100 meters away from Reykjavik downtown police station, and nobody notices a thing. Like, nobody reports any gunshots or anything. It's like, despite waging a small indoor war, apparently nobody noticed. Well, unless somebody at the police station did notice, but maybe it went down something like this.
Well, if I ignore this for another 5 minutes, it's gonna be someone else's problem.
Oh, and by the way, if this story does sound somewhat familiar, then yes, this is actually the real-life story that did, in fact, inspire the movie Skjótandi by Friðrik Þór Friðriksson. So, yeah, that's why you're probably gonna see a handful of clips from that movie in this video at some point. Once Ivar and Birkir got tired of all the shooting, they decided to rest for a moment. shortly after, they heard that somebody was apparently entering the store through the back door. And then they were greeted by the cleaning lady named Guðrún Tómasdóttir. Now Guðrún was naturally quite shocked and frightened when she found out that the store had completely shot to pieces and that the perpetrators were still inside there with her and that they were both drunk and heavily armed. However, apparently neither Ívar or Birkir acted aggressively towards her, and she even offered to make them some coffee, possibly simply in order to, keep them calm and, make sure that they didn't do anything to her. However, shortly after Birkir and Ívar exited the store through the same back exit that she had come into, Guðrún then ran out the front door and towards the police station where she informed the bewildered police officers on what had just occurred. As she is explaining what she saw, the police then also started to hear shots echoing through the neighborhood. The shooting spree was not yet over. When Birkir and Ívar exited the store, they were armed with 2 guns each. A 12-gauge side-by-side shotgun, a 12-gauge under and over shotgun, a 12-gauge single-barrel shotgun, and a 22 caliber bolt-action 7-shot rifle. They then made their way down a street called Snorrabraut, and occasionally they fired their guns at parked cars or windows or whatever else they came across, and on 2 occasions they even fired into the general direction of random pedestrians that they happened to come across, causing the people to, very naturally flee. Obviously this was very early and on a Sunday morning, so there was basically no traffic and nobody around, so thankfully there just weren't a lot of people around for them to fire at. Now, this is the point of the story where I need to remind you that the police at the time did not have access to firearms. This was, of course, 6 years before the Armed Rapid Response Unit, Víkingasveitin, was even founded. Now, at the beginning, the police simply cornered off the area around where Birkir and Ívar were walking, and obviously whenever some people came around, the police asked them to stay indoors and remain safe. The police several times shouted at Birkir and Ívar, urging them to give up their guns and come peacefully. Birkir and Ívar responded towards these calls by firing in the general direction of the police. However, it would appear that they weren't necessarily trying to harm or kill, just trying to keep the police at a distance. It could also be that they were just really intoxicated and just very bad shots. The police also tried to fire several canisters of tear gas towards them. However, due to it being a very windy morning, the gas simply dissipated into the atmosphere very rapidly and was unable to cause Birkir and Ívar any problems. During the shooting spree, Birkir and Ívar did find time to stop at a local liquor store where Ívar broke in order to grab a bottle of vodka. While he was inside, a police car pulled up next to the store and again tried to urge Birkir to surrender peacefully and give up his guns. Birkir fired at the police car, causing them to drive away as fast as they could. However, because of Birkir's shooting, he also fired into a nearby parked car where the driver of said car was taking refuge from the shooting, and the shotgun pellets from Birkir's gun came dangerously close from hitting that person in the head. Now, at this point, I really need to go off on a little bit of a tangent. Well, it is of course true that police were not issued firearms. However, a lot of policemen, just like a lot of civilians back then and now, did legally own shotguns and rifles, and a lot of policemen did also compete, in competition shooting, so many of them also owned pistols. So it's quite conceivable that if Birkir and Ívar had actually shot some people or caused serious injuries or even death, like if it had come down to the wire, then yeah, it's very conceivable that the police simply would have armed themselves appropriately and attempted to take them out, even though there was no legal protocol for doing so. I'm guessing that this possibility was probably being discussed very thoroughly as this all was going on. However, since this the shooting spree of Birkir and Ívar only lasted about 15 minutes, we just don't know for certain. After exiting the liquor store, Birkir and Ívar walked down a street called Egilsgata. Chief Inspector Magnus Einarsson was in charge of operations that evening. He concluded that since neither tear gas nor asking nicely had worked, then a different method had to be tried out in order to stop them. So he drove his police cruiser to the corner of Egilsgata and Barónsstígur and waited for the two men to appear behind the corner. As soon as Birkir and Ívar came into view, they suddenly heard a loud screeching sound and engine noise, and when they looked to their left, they saw a police cruiser come barreling towards them at an insane speed. Ívar bounced off the hood of the car and fell onto the street with a broken arm. Birkir was so shocked by what had occurred that he relinquished both of his guns and immediately surrendered, allowing the police to put him into handcuffs. They then also arrested Ívar and drove him to a hospital, and that was the end of the spree. Two policemen had also received shotgun pellets, however apparently they were unharmed by that ordeal. I tried my very hardest, but I was simply unable to find any information. Like I said, I don't even know what Birkir and Ívar, what their real names were, because all of the paper stories that I read about this case, none of them referenced them by name. So yeah, and because of that I was unable to find, what exactly, how their sentences were and whatnot, or perhaps if they have maybe longer criminal records past this event. Now, both of them were born in the mid-1950s, so it's quite feasible, quite likely, I mean, that they are still alive. So yeah, these guys are potentially just up and about somewhere. En ef einhver veit hvaða menn þetta ég meina, ef einhver þekkir þá, please skrifið það í komment, ekki nafngreina þá eða neitt þannig, alveg saman það bara, en þú veist, ef þetta frændið þinn eða pappin eða eitthvað, þú veist, það mjög fyndið að sjá það í kommentum, ef einhver kannast við þessa menn, eða, já, það mjög áhugavert að vita. Eða bara, já, ef einhver veit eitthvað meira hvað kom fyrir þá. Allavega, bara þakka ykkur kærlega fyrir að horfa, endilega deilið þessu myndbandi ef ykkur líkaði það og likeið, en especially put some comments because it helps in the algorithm, and I'll see you soon.
Ástandið í öryggismálum í kringum okkur hafði verið með þeim hætti að menn hér heima voru einnig farnir að hafa áhyggjur af þessu. Það var Ólympíuleikarnir í München 72 enduðu með skelfingu. Og svo hérna á heimavelli að þá kom upp atvik þar sem að menn brutust inn, stálu vopnum og gengu hérna bæinn skjótandi í allar áttir. Lögreglan átti miklum erfiðleikum með að leysa það mál farsællega.
Ljóst var að við þessari þróun yrði að bregðast.